Hello, my name is Dave Irvine, and I'm the Executive Director at the Highlands Center for Natural History. And you all know by now that the Highlands Center is celebrating its 25th year of legal incorporation. And as part of our celebration, we are talking with some of the key founders of this organization. And today I am in the secret nook in the James Family Discovery Gardens, and I am joined by Faith Roelofs, who is probably our longest serving volunteer in this organization. Dates back to the Community Nature Center before the Highlands Center was envisioned.
Yes.
And so Faith, thank you for joining me. And tell us just a little bit about how you got involved and been involved in the Highlands Center for all these years.
Well, sure. Good morning to you. My family, my husband and I came to Prescott for the very first time in late December of 1989. And we were here to scout out Embry-Riddle because our son was going to come as a student, and we hoped we could come back on sabbatical. So it was a year of one of your best snows, and Elks Hill was plowed solid with snow, and we thought that was pretty cool. Coming from Hawaii, that was really cool. And we grabbed a Prescott Courier and started reading up about the place. So the first one I opened, on the second page, was a letter to the editor by Helene Kaplan, one of our also founders who's not with us anymore. Mm-hmm. And she was bemoaning the fact that the Prescott Unified School District had to close their nature center and let go their teacher for environmental education, who was Carl Tomoff at the time, and that this should not be allowed. That the community would need to rise up and recreate this, or something had to happen to keep it open. So that's kind of rang a bell with me, because I had been working for the previous 10 years in Honolulu on helping to create a nature center. So I had a little bit of experience under my feet, and thought I could be helpful to them. But I wasn't living here, so that was a bit of a problem, and we actually weren't able to move here for another 5 years. But I got hooked up with Leslie Glustrom and Helene Kaplan and Eileen Ferguson and a number of other people who really cared about our community here in Prescott, and thought that this nature center had to come back alive. And so over the summer, we all got together and planned, and were allowed to use the old property, which has a lovely little cabin, just a dream. And so we started talking with teachers in second grade. We wanted to focus on second grade for our first classes. So we talked with some of our teachers and found out what the standards were at that time for second graders. So we knew that this had to be a science-based program, and it needed to fit into their curriculum structure and their standards. So with those things in mind, we started just going out in the field. I can't believe sometimes when I think back of it, how little we knew, and none of that bothered us because we thought we knew what we were doing. But I think maybe my greatest contribution has been, through the years, has been helping to develop activities that connect children especially to the environment. Because if you just lecture, it goes right in and out, and you don't.
It doesn't stick.
It doesn't stick.
Yeah.
And because I am probably the luckiest kid on the planet, I grew up in upstate New York, running through the woods, down in the creek, playing in the water, building forts with my brother, riding our horse, with a lot of freedom. And the healthfulness of being outdoors all the time, and eating food that was being grown in our family gardens, because this was during the war, and that's what you did. So I had the perfect childhood basis for helping to do this kind of work. And I do believe that that's where it starts for most kids, most people, that as it has to start early.
Yeah. And a lot of children don't get that experience today that you got when you were growing up and sent outside to play.
Yes, exactly. That's why I thought I had something to contribute, because I could take my childhood experience and joy and hopefully and translate it into a new environment, because upstate New York is not this. This is different, and it has so much wonderful things to share with anybody who can be outdoors.
Well, tell us, are there any of those special moments that come to mind that we like to call mission moments here at the Highlands Center that you remember from your times of teaching so many children?
Yes, there is a mission moment that I'll never forget. And it happened with a 4th grade class. Now, we're at the old Community Nature Center, and we were sitting under a big juniper tree, and there was a branch that came across just above our heads. And if you recall, the kids sat on split log benches, and we were in the shade, and we were gathered around a small group, maybe 10, less probably, because that's one of the criteria, I think, for teaching outdoors, is small groups. Yeah. And the kids were there, and one little boy pointed up to the tree, and he said, "Oh, look at that. It's a dinosaur or something." And it was a really big lizard, bigger than any I have seen in upstate Arizona. And so the teacher was right on it. And we all looked at the lizard, and we watched its bobbing and its gular pouch and its colors, and we talked about it. We ditched the entire rest of the program and just spent the next 20 minutes watching that lizard up there on the branch. And one of the parents ran back to try to get a book that we could try to figure out who it was, and we couldn't, because it wasn't anything the rest of us had seen. Wow. So that, to me, was the ultimate teaching moment, miracle moment, as you say. Yeah. And I remember it still. It's been almost 30 years.
And I would bet that young boy no longer a young boy, but I bet you he still remembers it as well.
And I hope he's one of our docents right now. Because
or one of our supporters or members, or
absolutely
doing good work somewhere else.
That's how it starts, with a teaching moment, a moment of real.
A moment of wonder.
Wonder, yes.
Yeah, that's where it begins.
And that's one of our mission words, wonder and connection. And the connection part, well, that was there, full blast. The teacher was there too, on it, full blast. But other things we tried to do as we were developing these first lessons for the 2nd grade was to have a lot of fun, stay away from the heavy things that are happening to the environment, and just be in the environment and observe with all our senses. That is extremely important, to use all our senses, hearing. Even we, I think, could taste a couple of things. So one thing from my childhood that I could share here in Prescott was a game called Hucklebuckle Beanster. And the name itself was kind of a hook, a catch. Right. And the hook idea is something we learned from Fiona, who became our education director down the road. But she always said, have a hook in the beginning of your lesson so that you have the attention before you start. So Hucklebuckle Beanster was the hook, and we had challenged the kids, 2nd grade, to pretend they are predators. What's a predator? And everybody can fill that in. And to go through this little trail, which is actually still over there, where we had hidden prey animals in the trees and in the rocks and in the grass, and let them look for a prey, something that they as a hawk or a coyote could eat. And if they saw one, they were to say, Hucklebuckle Beanster. Not point at it, because then the other predators would get it. And that allowed us to develop the connection between predator and prey in a happy, kind of joyful way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a very engaging way.
It was a lot of fun. I remember it from my being that age.
Yeah, and I never heard the term huckle-buckle beanster until I came to the Highlands Center for Natural History.
It's an old thing from upstate New York where I grew up.
Well, I know you've been involved in a lot of different projects over the time here at the Highlands Center. Can you share your memories of some of the most special projects that stand out to you?
Well, my probably most endeared one that's so endeared to me is a program we called Natural Heritage Adventures. Not natural history, but natural heritage, because gold was discovered in this very area in Lynx Creek. But way back in 1863 by the Joseph Redford Walker exploring prospecting group. He came with about 35 other prospectors. And it happened right here. And within a year, they had gone from maybe the 36 of them to 1,000 people in what then became Prescott. And of course, the Army came to protect them, and the whole history is just absolutely fascinating. So it seemed to me that what we could do is recreate that in a living history style. And so I became a pioneer lady, maybe one of the first. Her name was Mary Ramos. And since this time, my daughter, who lived in Austin, Texas at the time, and I did a lot of research in their archives to find out where this lady came from in Texas and how did she get to Prescott and why would she leave? She had children. So her whole story, as we have come to understand it, is just absolutely fascinating. But for me, in my heart, being a country girl, I found a character who was strong and focused and could live off the grid, so to speak. I mean, completely, because until they even had wagon trains, they had what they had. Lived off the land completely. And so Mary came across the prairie in the southern part of the state, and this is during the start of the Civil War, 1861 or so. She is somehow walking, or maybe had horses, because she wasn't poor, we know now. And she came with another person who might have been a slave. His name was Hampton Brown. And somehow their path led them to Prescott in 1864. They were here. I think she probably was among the first Caucasian women. Yeah. She wasn't Hispanic, we're quite sure. Even though she has the name of Mary Ramos. She later married someone named Ramos. So for me, to put myself in Mary Ramos's shoes and clothing, we made all our own clothing, and to demonstrate how she lived here, we also created Sam and Jake Miller came with their father, John, and they are the progenitors of Miller Valley. We know that one of the fifth generation people of one of those boys. So the Millers were here. So we created a prospector and put him in full clothing of the time. And there was also a young scientist who came to Fort Whipple with the Army. He was from the Smithsonian Institution in 1860s, early 1860s. Right. But he was a quote, surgeon. So we kind of compared and contrasted his methods of fixing a broken leg to what Mary Ramos would do as a country woman with just the things she had from the land. Yeah. And for the first part of our program, we were offering it to the public. And so on Saturdays, we actually had 3 stations down there by the creek. And our guests would walk, taking a little nature walk, and encounter first Elliot Cowes, the surgeon, and then Mary Ramos, the pioneer lady, and then John Miller prospecting in the creek. And it was really such a lot of fun to do. So then came along Lisa Packard, who was building the gardens in the back in the schoolyards. Yes. And her curriculum included one segment of pioneer living in the 5th grade. So Mary Ramos went around to many of the schools, but especially Coyote Springs, which was the first school that was developed, and they were so into it. And Mary Ramos went there for a number of years. Also out in PV, several schools, Granville, and some other schools. Miller Valley was another one. So they had plants in their gardens, native plants, that were in Mary Ramos's basket.
Which you happen to have.
I do. I brought it. I can't go anywhere without my basket. Because, as we know, we're trying to connect people to experience it. So I'm going to ask you, Dave, to take this plant and squeeze the leaves. And smell it and see if it reminds you of anything.
Yeah, it smells very medicinal.
Aromatic.
Maybe like a Vicks or something.
You're really close. And so if you have a bad cough, even to this day, you can buy Horehound cough drops. And they will soothe your throat and help you calm your coughing and maybe help you clear your nose, because it's a little Vicksy, isn't it?
Yeah. I might need that since it's allergy season.
Yeah, well. So here in this basket, I developed, at least 30 things that, enough for each child or person and teacher to take one and look at it and try to see what you think it could be used for. Probably our most fun thing was a broken bone, because a lot of kids do have experienced broken bones. So I would pick out a child who I thought could go with this, and we would splint them up, and we would talk about how long is it going to take for your bone to heal? How are you going to sleep with this on? How does this healing happen? And so
and that was the cast, right?
That was the cast of the time. And they would then tell us about the cast they actually had. You're right. So
a little harder to sign that one.
Right. So it's just a bunch of things. Even bread mold, which I learned as we went along. I had a moldy tortilla that I carried with me. Because if you put that on a really bad infection where the horse bit you or something, or you got a spider bite, and you've got some oozing, yucky thing.
Yeah.
This, for some reason, which we did not understand in 1864, it went away. And then the teacher will usually pipe up and say, "Oh, I wonder if that would be penicillin." Yes.
It comes from a mold, which probably most people don't know.
Exactly today. Right. And then there's aspirin that comes from the bark of the willow tree. And this is the time of year to harvest your bark while the aspirin is beginning to regrow. It's soft. The saps are flowing through it. So there's aspirin. And I mentioned to you earlier, ephedra. This isn't so common up here in our area, but ephedra on the way down to Phoenix is the basis of allergy medicines and infections in your lungs. So this was just a way of helping children realize what would it be like to not have to everything come from nature. Yeah. And it really did work. This is a gigantic hook for children.
And it's wonderful because it connects people back to the land as well as teaching them about the history of the settlement of Prescott.
Absolutely. And the children in the gardens that they had just built had many of these plants, so they could go find them.
Yeah.
We even extended this to the middle school level, and that program didn't last too long, but it was very very fun and challenging and good to do.
Yeah, well, it's been a lot of creative different programs offered at the Highlands Center throughout the years, and continues. But certainly that was one of the special ones.
Yes.
And so, what, Faith, has kept you involved since 1989? I think you said. And
well, that's when I read that editorial.
And you're still involved today. And what has kept you involved all these years here at the Highlands Center?
Oh, it's the joy. It's really the joy, and the opportunity to share it with mostly kids. That's been my focus. But we see from the letters that they write back to us how much they get out of it. And if you can impress even one child in a school program and plant that little seed, I think that's what goes such a long, long way to eventually, now that we are super challenged by the problems in our environment, all of us are stepping forward because we have to. Yeah. We love it, and we don't want to lose our home.
And it's hard to do that if you don't have a connection to the land,
like
earlier peoples had.
Yes, exactly right.
And, what do you think of? I'll let you take your bonnet off if you like, because Mary might not be joining us.
I'm kind of enjoying my bonnet because I don't have a problem with the sun.
Leave it on, that's fine. So as you think about the future, what do you think, what does that hold for you as you think maybe about the next 25 years for the Highlands Center?
Yeah. My joy with working is that knowing where we came from back in 1991, I think when Nicole came on and we had our first classes, to where we are on this very moment. This is an incredibly creative organization. It attracts people, soulmates, really, people who have to have nature in their life, appreciate it. And I hope that I see the Nature Center, the Highlands Center, being able to grow, continue to grow, as it has so magnificently for these last 30 years. To continue to grow, and maybe working in our regional parks, our new regional parks, and it's a nimble organization, and there's no end to what your new staff can do. I have seen part of that in action already, and there's no end to what can be done.
We've had some talented people.
Yes.
That have come here. So.
Right, it's wonderful.
And you being one of them, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
Just one little very special thing. Excuse me a minute, I'm gonna reach down. When we hired Nicole in 1991, she is more a child of the land than any other person I think I know. And she gave us a true gift. When we were developing our programs, she wanted each fourth grade class to have a journal. This is mine from starting to fall apart. And I was reluctant to do this because I'm sort of one who likes to just run around. But no, when we were sitting at that beautiful little pond in the old Nature Center, each of the fourth graders would have a journal, and they would be asked to be quiet or to go to a secret spot It's another one of her great hooks. Every child could go to a secret spot within view of the teacher around the pond and write in their journal how they feel. What do they see? What does it smell like? What is the sun and what are the sounds? Everything through their senses. And she even challenged us to write haiku poetry. That was a giant leap for me. But as I was going through this yesterday, I found this one that I wrote on October 9th, 1997, sitting at the pond with a bunch of wonderful fourth graders. And this is what I wrote. The cattails glisten in the noonday sun. All around us, insects busily hum. Children have come here this beautiful fall day to listen and watch and feel what nature has to say. They have come to learn and hopefully care how to keep the earth healthy for us all to share.
Wonderful.
Nice, huh?
That's a wonderful way to close our time together. Thank you, Faith, because I'm sure the kids who were there with you had that same experience, and many other kids that followed. And thank you so much for all you've given and all you made possible here at the Highlands Center as one of our founding mothers of the organization.
It's been my gift to you, to us, to me. Yes.
And thank you all for joining us again today. And we will be doing more of these 25th anniversary videos coming up. So keep checking back as we meet other people who were key to the Highlands Center's development. And you could always learn more about what's going on at the Highlands Center today by going to our website at highlandscenter.org and coming out and having some of these special moments for yourself, for your children, and for your family. Thank you so much for joining us.